it looks like it's us.
Yeah.
So I think we might start now, right? As always, we can do a short round of first impressions and then go on to start the discussion about the story. So, well, the story was The Talkie Season by Alice Munro. I must say I had no idea what it was going to be about when I chose it, because I wanted to choose another Alice Munro story, but they weren't available online. So I was like, oh, okay, all the stories I want to choose are not available to read. So I have to choose one that is in the New Yorker, because Alice Munro has been writing short stories for the New Yorker ever since the beginning of her writing career. So this was the one that was most recommended online from all her short stories. So that's the one I chose. Adrian, you're first. You're first. So what did you think about the story?
Well, I have read before a book of stories by Alice Munro like 6 or 7 years ago, and I didn't like it much. I thought that it was average at most. Some of the stories were cool, some others I didn't like, and some others were okay. So on average, were like not like good. But I liked this one. It wasn't something impressive or especially amusing, something that I could say, wow, it's one of the best stories that I ever read, but it wasn't bad neither. I liked how it describes the work environment, so realistic, like the way they behave, the little annoying things that they do, that the other things that are horrible just because they spend many hours together working. The little things that happen in any work environment, like an office where everything's a drama and everything's huge. We don't even know what Brian is his name, right? What he did. But if he hadn't done anything, even the slightest thing would have been a huge drama, I think, because that's how workplaces work. And it was very realistic, very detailed. In that sense, I think that Munro accomplished the objective of transporting me to the turkey factory. So that's good.
Well, I'm glad it was a better opinion of of the story than the ones you've read before. So, yeah. Mo, what did you think about it? You're next.
Yeah, I liked it. I don't think it was the most memorable story in the world, but it was well drawn, and all the characters were well drawn, like you feel like you knew them. And I guess putting it in context, I think it was published in 1980, I think was the date at the bottom. So in that way, I like that it had, I don't know, talked about the existence of gay people, which for the time was nice that they at least existed in the story. Or maybe, I guess we don't really know for sure, but heavily implied. So yeah, I am happy that I read it. I don't think I'd read anything by Alice Munro before, so I'd like to read more.
It's new to you too.
Yeah.
So Andrea, you're next. What did you think about it? Did you like it?
Yeah, I also don't think I have read anything of this author before. And this story for me was a bit of meh. Like, I don't know, it's not the worst, but it's not the best. I think it has like too many characters maybe for a little plot. Like, I didn't understand why some of the character, like the participation of some of the characters, and how some elements connects, like the turkey with the incident of this Brian guy. For me, maybe it was like a story more for like displaying characters, but I don't know. It's okay, but I didn't love it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more of a character study story, but yeah, I agree with most of your opinion. So, Angela, what did you think about it?
Yes, I like it in general, but it was so fun because in the beginning, when it describes the characters, I read so bad, and I read that the boss and his son were dedicating to the killing. But I read bad, and I was thinking about a murdering. So I was thinking like in the I was reading and I was thinking, but is this a thriller? Because I don't find that this is a thriller. So I started other time to read like correctly, and like I like it as, but I have this. I agree with Andrea. Like for me, some characters were really well described, but others are like, I don't know, like additionally, like you don't know so much about them. So it's like, I don't know. I like how they were described, but I find also so many characters for the story.
Thank you, Angela. So, Colleen, what did you think about it? Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I've read other things by Alice Munro, and I generally like her. I thought it was interesting. I mean, the topic, the turkey barn, which I never thought of it before, you know, how they process turkeys. And yeah, I felt like the story was much more centered around kind of maybe some socioeconomic, social issues. Yeah, the gays, I mean, that was it was interesting the way that they described them. And yeah, just some social issues. I mean, you saw like quite a bit of, you know, she mentioned like the hypocrisy that people would have, and like sexism and stuff like that. So it was interesting, yeah, but it was very much focused on, I felt much more like the social issues than anything.
Okay, thank you. So, Eloisa, what did you think about it?
Okay, when I started to read it and they describe all the gutted turkey things, and I started to think, oh, I'm not going to like this. But after that, yeah, it's okay. I didn't love it, but yeah, all the people say it and the descriptions were good, and all this gossipy and all the people talking about others. Yeah, it was alright. I like it, but it wasn't one of my favorite ones from these meetings. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Jose, what did you think about it?
Hi, thank you. This is my first time in the meetup, and thank you for being a guest. And I have liked it. I read last year. I read Too Much Happiness about the same author, and I didn't like at all. Which I didn't like, but this short history, I like it. Yes, it's easier to read. Is yes for me. It's better literature than Too Much Happiness, unless for me. This is my point of view.
Same thing
Thank you.
happened to me. Like the book that I said before that I had read is Too Much Happiness, and this story is better than any story in Too Much Happiness.
I really
Okay,
liked
so
it.
we have a Too Much Happiness haters group here. Certainly not a recommended book by Alice Munro.
No, well, like we have someone here who loves it or likes it, so.
Yeah, I really liked it, you know, but yeah, I mean, well, we all have
2 to 1.
right?
Yeah.
2 versus 1.
Yeah,
Good
two
odds.
versus
Good odds. Let's pick it up. The one I have, I have it here, is Open Secrets. And they say it's a really good book.
Open Secrets, I haven't read that one.
They say it's a really good one by Alice Munro, and especially the short story called the same, Open Secrets. But I couldn't find it anywhere, so I chose this one. So yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it. It was not a mind-blowing story by any means. It didn't leave me shocked or overly satisfied, but it was fine. I liked it. And I agree with what Jose said. It was very easy to read for me. I breezed through it because I like the style, and I think it's not one of those stories that is very easy to read because it's very simple. it had its own voice. The narrator, the girl that is telling the story, I think she has her own voice and her own style of showing how, as Adrian said, how things are in the workplace. And it's true, I've I've not been working for a long time, but I work in a very big office, and there are a lot of good people, there are a lot of bad people, there are people you're like, where the hell did you come out from? Why are you like that? And I can't understand you. And there's some people that are so good and so nice that you're like, wow, I want to know more people like you. So yeah, I agree. Relationships in the workplace can be very interesting because there are a lot of people that don't need to have anything in common. For example, here in the turkey farm, as it's shown, there are educated people, there are non-educated people. We have and we have some topics, some social topics Mo and Colleen talked about, like homosexuality, and I think it was more like family issues, such as it's discussed like alcoholism and marriage problems, marriage abuse. So yeah, I think it's a lot to be packed into this short story.
Yeah.
So
I thought it,
oh yeah,
oh, sorry.
continue.
I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting how she described gays, because instead of it being like how they relate sexually, it was, well, they like to bake and they like to decorate. And so I thought it was very like, wow, you know, like the definition of gay is that, you know, you like another man or another woman, the same sex, but, you know, their definition is, well, if you're a man and you like to bake. And so it was, yeah, I thought, yeah, it was interesting, like to see how socially people in her circle at that time saw gays, like how they defined them.
Yeah, it seems to be such a conservative town or place where they are living, that what define men and women are specific characteristics for the sexes. Like a man has to behave like this and has to do this kind of jobs and has to have these abilities and skills. And women has to behave like this and do these jobs. And if one of them changes what they do, like for example, if they become decorators or they like, you know, for example, color pink, they are gay. It doesn't matter if they have sex with men or not.
And even if they aren't really gay, suddenly, oh, he likes music, so he must be gay. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I really thought it was a very strange coincidence, because just a few days ago I was watching a video from a boy I follow, and he had just read a book. He was just commenting it. I can't remember what the book was, but he was commenting the fact that in the book it was discussed whether being gay could also be seen as a personality trait. And I thought that the topic was so, wow, being gay is not a personality trait. And he was like, yeah, I thought it was not a personality trait, it was just a sexual orientation. But after I read this book, I was starting to wonder, maybe it is some of it. And because he argued that it shaped the way you wear. For example, if you are from a different sexuality than is accepted, you often evolve in different ways than a straight white man. He was being very funny, because he was saying, for example, I know a lot of straight white males, and they have personality traits that are because they're straight white and men. And I was like, yeah, but I don't really see it. I think he was right. It's a very difficult topic that doesn't have an outright answer. But when I read this, I was like, this debate again? Only a few days later, but it was interesting. And yeah, I got the feeling that it wasn't necessarily the author's ideas, but rather the town's mentality. More like, this is how we see it. You have certain hobbies, certain likes and dislikes that are more appropriate to what's feminine or what's masculine, and that's the way you are. you're a man who likes men just because you're more feminine than you were supposed to be. But also what Mo said, it was written in 1980. Well, published. It was a long time ago. So
Yes.
I think that only just the fact that homosexuality is discussed and not in a bad light, but more in a neutral light, is good.
Yeah, I thought that was also interesting because I mean, I think the story is based in the States, I think, and I know back in the 1980s, I mean, typically being gay wasn't accepted at all. There was a lot of back in the 80s. There were a lot of violence against gay people and things like that. And so, I mean, it was interesting to me that like it was actually they said, well, they weren't hurting anybody and they were accepted, and this was like not, you know, it seemed like a smaller town, like, you know, kind of socioeconomically not very, there were, you know, maybe some poverty going on and things like that. So I also thought that was an interesting thing.
Yeah, also, one of the people who are described, one of the villagers who is described as being gay, is part of the church.
Yeah.
That really blew me away. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And he was accepted and no one saw any problem with him. I was like, well, I like this 1980 version of the United States or Canada, because the author is from Canada, so it may be Canada.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's set in Canada, and it's set in the 40s or something. It's like the
Alice Munro's from Canada, right?
Say in the 40s.
Yeah. Did you guys not get that? It's just
Yeah,
the story takes place in the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The person
because
who's-
the
Yeah.
protagonist is narrating things that happened when she was 14 years old. So it's like way back.
Well, I
So
did.
that makes it more surprising.
She's writing from the perspective that she's like older in the present time.
That's right. I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah. So it's even more surprising that they were quite accepted by the community. At
It
least
didn't strike me as so. Especially being a small community. I know that it's counterintuitive, that precisely because of being a small town, there's more hate against different things for the people who escape the norm and don't follow the standards of how you must behave. But also, when there's someone who is known by the community and is part of the community and everybody knows that it's this way, I think it tends to be more accepted. It's like it's part of the group, it's part of the town with its peculiarities that everybody knows about, and people go on their day without paying much attention to it. Somehow it didn't strike me as so. It's true that in Spain we had a different evolution regarding sexual orientation acceptance, which we didn't have so much trouble as other countries. So maybe that's the reason we think that is more normal.
Yeah, that's true. I also didn't think it was odd because I think it depends on the community. There are small communities that are very close-minded, that are very, very, very quick to disapprove of certain people. But I think there are other communities that are very, very close-knit, very, very caring for each other, for its members. And as you said, when it's one person that they like, for example, the son of one of the richest people in the community, I think he was also seen as being gay. We don't know whether he is or not, or a member of the church. So there are people the townspeople already like, so they just accept their different traits, their homosexuality, their feminine tastes, as just another part of them that, well, it's different, but they, as they said, they're not harming anyone, so leave them be. And many times these type of things are even welcome because it gives you something to gossip about when people don't have anything to talk about. It's like, oh look, this boy, the son of this man, just won a baking contest again. Oh, because he's gay and things like that. So I don't really think they mean any harm. I think the community looks very close-knit and very, very nice, very accepting in their own way.
Yeah. one of the reasons that I did that strike me as so, I think is because we will have to, and we are imagining here now, but I think that we have to divide into ideological, general ideas that the people in the town may have, and their acts towards certain individuals. Like, and here's what I'm imagining. If we could ask to the people in the town, what do you think of homosexuality? Many of them will start talking and saying things like, no, but God, for God, that is bad, or that's immoral, or whatever. But if they ask, what do you think of this specific person that is baking these delicious pastries? They will say, oh, he's nice. You mean, even if he's gay, like individually to accept them, even if in theory, their homosexuality is something that is not good.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's curious also how this man, I don't remember the name, Herf or something like that, like he wasn't so feminist, I mean with feminist tastes, I want to say, but like the women are trying to fit him, but like he doesn't like, I don't know, decorate or music or whatever, it's just they are trying to fit him, like they can't, and they are trying like, oh, he should be gay, but it's like they have like labels. And
I think their reasoning is more like, well, he doesn't have any he doesn't want have a wife, he isn't starting a family, he doesn't show any interest for women, so he must be gay.
yeah, because of this, like, it's something they need to do.
I think so, yeah. And it's really quite progressive, because before, as you said, only people were only certain that a man was gay because he was feminine, and there exists people exist that are gay and not feminine. They're manly, but they like other men. It happens. So it was really, for being written such a long time ago and being set in the 40s, it's quite advanced thinking. And what did you think about the setting, the turkey farm? Did you find it believable? Well, I don't know if anyone here has an experience about farming, but
Me no.
No.
I don't,
No.
but I have to say the scene where she explains how she do the work was, for me, was like a bit too much, too explicit.
oof, it was very
I thought it was
gross.
a bit
For me.
gross.
Yeah.
I really didn't like it.
Yeah, but you can really tell in that passage that Munro knows what she's talking about, like very well. Sirin, as far as I know, lives in a small place also in Canada, or used to live. And I think, I mean, this story, one of the reasons that I like it more than the other stories is that it seems to be more realistic in a way. Like, she has some stories where she describes her past, and it's biographical. She even says, yes, this happened to me. And this story sounds like that. It's like she's describing something that she lived when she was younger. It's so real. Because the other stories, even if they are not like the ones in Too Much Happiness, even if they are not fantasy or science fiction or anything, they still have a component of, I don't know, fiction. Like, she's telling me a story that is happening with different characters and personalities, and maybe they are believable, but it doesn't sound like it's completely real, like it's something that happened to her. This story does, maybe because of the way it's written, where it's like, yeah, what we said, someone remembering something that happened in her past when she was only 14. But still, it's like too detailed. The way she describes how to do the turkey thing, yeah, I guess he documented very well, asked or even visited factories to understand the process. But the entire setting, the relationship between the boss and the workers, and this person that is like in between, like a coordinator, supervisor, herb, and his position with the other co-workers is very, very realistic. Seems to me that, I don't know, like either Munro has lived that in her past or has known it closely very well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I also
Oh, sorry. She went in. Yeah, I appreciated her detail. She went into great detail about the turkeys, how they did it. Also about like the two ladies, like how they would talk to the turkeys. Well, the things they would say. So that was quite nice.
And also when Herb is explaining to her how to do it, he uses some terminology, some words that are not technical but are like a farmer's words. Oh, you have to cut through here, you have to go through there. It sounds like how a man used to working in a turkey farm would talk. It sounds very believable too.
But do you guys think that the turkey farm has any meaning, or it could be like any other kind of type of business? Because I was wondering, because she explains so much about the process of killing the turkeys, that it has to have a meaning, right?
Yeah, I didn't see any symbolic or metaphysical meaning. Maybe there is, and Munro was trying to accomplish that by choosing turkeys specifically. Like maybe there's some correlation that I don't see with the purpose of turkeys in society. Why do we eat them, or why do Americans eat them, and when? I don't know. I didn't see any link. What I think is that any manual labor could have do the work for the story, because the main character has a problem with manual labor. She says that she's good doing like school tasks and stuff like that, but not with manual labor, and that drives her actions through the story in different ways. So I guess that any manual labor will have worked.
Yeah, I really like that because I felt very identified with the main character when she talked about why she chose the working at the turkey farm, because she was struggling with manual labor. She wanted it the same way as others that only did manual labor would want an education or work related with having a high school diploma or going to university. And she was so enamored at first with this idea of working that I felt very identified with her, because when I started working, I was like that. I was like, wow, I feel so important for going to work, and I want to do hard work to do. And I first started with manual labor. I started working in clothes shops where I had to sort everything, where I had to carry big boxes. I had to do lots of this stuff. I got home and I was so tired I couldn't even wake up from my bed because my limbs hurt because of all the running and all the lifting I had to do, especially when I work nights. So I felt really identified with her, because when you're like that, when you're a teenager and you're just starting to work, it all seems very cute and very cool, very fascinating. And then it's really nothing but you're working at a turkey farm and you're killing birds and you're gutting them, and it's horrible, but you like it because it's this novelty of doing new things. I really felt that was genuine.
I think that at the beginning, when is like all this horrible part about describing the thing, is like a contrast with the thing that you are saying. Like, I don't know. I think that a farm like is a place when you can do this contrast, like write these terrible things, but on the other hand, have this
Camaraderie, yeah.
I don't know this word in English, like with your co-workers, or being proud of yourself. I mean, I think that this farm thing is just to make this contrast and increase this feeling of camaraderie with your co-workers. And also it's a place when you can put all these random people together, like just this girl with the other woman, with, I don't know, with the old man, the 86-year man. And I think that is because these things.
Yeah, I thought the 86-year-old man was so funny. I couldn't keep a straight face when I was reading about him, because he brings this thermo of whiskey to work, and I was blown away by that. Like some of us might bring our lunchbox to work, he brings his whiskey thermo because it's the only thing that gets him through today, and I thought it was so funny. And so believable because some 86-year-old men, some 86-year-old people behave like that. They no longer care about what you think about them.
Yeah, I thought it was funny too.
And for me, whiskey with Coke is quite normal, right? Like, it's like a cubata. You drink whiskey with Coca-Cola. Like, what's strange about that?
But I think it was the type of whiskey, like rye whiskey.
Oh.
It's kind of weird. Like, you would not go into a bar and be like, give me a Coke and rye. Like, nobody would say that.
I thought it was that. I don't drink alcohol, but I thought it was the mixture, because it was not, for example, ron cola is very typical, a very typical choice. No, it was odd because it was this strong whiskey with Coke and they didn't mash up. I thought it was that. But we don't know at the end. Maybe you had rye whiskey with cola before.
No, rye whiskey specifically, no. Maybe it's that. Like, it's the kind of whiskey that you usually drink just alone or on the rocks or something, but not mixing it with anything else.
Well, so I really like that she was 14 and they put her and her classmate, the son of the farm owner, they poured them also whiskey, but just a little bit. I thought it was funny because I thought they were just going to give them colas, but it shows that it's not said in our times. It was so long ago. It reminded me of those ads. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're ads from that time, the 1930s and 1920s, where they're ads for syrup, for cough syrups and things like that, that were made from heroin.
No,
given to children. So it reminded me of that. Have you ever seen them?
Wow.
I haven't seen them. No.
In the 1920s and 30s, like, everything had opium products in it. Like, Coca-Cola was made with coca, like, like, that's where the name comes from. And like, all the throat drops and cough drops all had like heroin.
Yeah, I have it right here. I think maybe I can show you with the compartir pantalla, but it's true, really, it exists. And it shows children arguing for,
and even the pregnant woman was drinking the whiskey at the end.
Yeah.
Was she pregnant? Yes, I was surprised as well. Like, maybe she had the child already.
I don't know if you're seeing it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Jarabe Valle de heroína. And it shows children arguing for the bottle of jarabe of syrup.
Wow.
And
I'm sure it was very effective.
Pure heroin.
It probably worked very well.
Yeah, and it says cough disappears, and it's like, yeah, cough disappears, but addiction appears, so it's quite a big problem. So yeah, I don't know until which year it was distributed, but I mean it's crazy. And it reminded me of that, because they give children whiskey so nonchalantly, like, yeah, have some whiskey with a bit of Coke. Yeah, you're 14. Okay, doesn't matter. So it was very funny to me.
Well, it seems that we are going back, which in this case is going forward with some drugs like cannabis, like marijuana and stuff, use it for medicinal uses. That is like now so on the news. Well, it's something similar, I guess, right? Like, but not so addictive. Cannabis
is a little bit different than heroin. I mean,
not
really. Can't really even compare the two.
For children.
Yeah, but we use drugs like morphine and some opiaceous that are like addictive and they are not good, and we still use it for medicinal use.
There's a big problem now, especially in the US with the prescription drug addiction, because they're opiates, so they're very, very addictive and they're very overprescribed. So it's a big problem now. But you can't just like pop down to the pharmacy and like grab a bottle. Like, you do need a prescription, but I guess they didn't understand that back then.
But I guess cannabis is seen as like the future. That in the future it might be like, for example, tobacco or alcohol, a legal drug, very very controlled, very restricted, but still legal. Because, for example, the company I work for, which is the Philip Morris, which owns a lot of tobacco brands like Marlboro, for example, they invested back in 2010 in a very big Canadian cannabis company that is pushing for cannabis to be regulated in the world so that they can start distributing freely. And I think that big companies wouldn't do these types of things if they thought maybe cannabis would never get legalized. I think it will. Maybe there are
a lot of
years
places already. I mean,
yeah.
My sister lives in Colorado, and and this is
Colorado.
Yeah, in the States, and it's legal there. And when I went to visit her, I mean, she had chocolate bars with cannabis in them. You can just go to the store and buy it. And yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I almost said, I want to bring one back to Spain. And she said, no, don't do that. And I thought, oh yeah, that's right. If they stop me in customs, I'm in trouble.
in Europe, we have Amsterdam.
Yeah, Amsterdam. Yeah. But it's crazy,
God.
You can just
I saw a lot of cookies that looked so good, and it was like, yeah, but the only thing is that they have cannabis in them, so I'm not going to try them. But I'm sucker for chocolate, so they were really, really tempting. And brownies, magic brownies. They have magic brownies too.
Yeah, brownies.
I guess that in the States it's even different, more different, because you live, for example, Colorado, you don't even have to cross the customs because you're not living in the country, but go to a different state that is not legal and they can detain you, right?
Yeah, you get in trouble. You have to be very careful because then you get it in your mind that it's okay. And then, if you cross the state line, then
yeah, because you can show up to your local store in Colorado and buy it. But then when you go to another state and ask for it, they will look at you like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
It's illegal.
It just shows how arbitrary our laws are. Because we live in this state of law where we think that whatever we agree as society that is okay, everybody should follow. But then it's so relative. It depends on where you're living and at what time. And sometimes you do something that is illegal, but you don't feel that it is. And the other way around, you can do a lot of stuff nowadays in our societies that is totally not moral, but is legal. It's like, I don't know, so random the laws.
Yeah, so also, I don't know whether you know about it, but I don't know if in the 40s homosexuality in the United States was still illegal, or in Canada. I don't know, because at that time laws were very strict with this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure they couldn't get married. I don't know if it was.
Oh, for sure.
They couldn't get. I don't know if I don't know.
Because at that time laws were kind of strict towards regarding this type of thing. I don't know, in some places homosexuality was still a crime, while in other places you could be homosexual but people just couldn't know about it.
Yeah,
so otherwise you could get in trouble. So
like, I don't know.
I don't know the history in Canada.
Yeah,
oh my god, your lights.
Yeah, it happens every time.
It only happens when we're like in this meeting. It's weird.
I mean, the lamps, the bulbs are connected to Wi-Fi, and because they are this smart thing is that you can control through Google Home and stuff. So for some reason, at this time, when we are connected to the video conference, they start like flickering. Well, they do that several times.
So you live in a smart house.
I tried to, yes, but it's quite difficult to accomplish. But it was nice.
Maybe it's a hacker, someone far away controlling your life. That's possible.
I think everyone is much too old to have seen it, but when I was little, there was this, I think it was a Disney Channel movie that was about a smart house that was evil and people died inside because the house killed them. So
what? They did not air that on Disney Channel. I'm sorry.
What?
They did not play that on Disney Channel. They wouldn't play
it's kind of like that.
people dying in a
One of the worst
house.
things in Disney Channel.
People don't die on Disney Channel.
Yeah, they played it.
Well, I think you're remembering, you're exaggerating it in your mind.
Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's true that the house was evil and it trapped people inside and did
That I
horrible,
believe.
horrible things. Or maybe it was Monster House. I can't remember. But yeah, I'm really scared something would happen because hackers have hacked your house. But yeah, and also I think that the we were talking before about why Alice Munro chose the setting of the turkey farm for the story, and I think what we were saying is right. I think Angela was saying it's because of the contrast, because we have this very fragile relationships between the co-workers, because some of them don't get along, some of them hate each other outright, some of them even try to have some kind of connection. For example, the main character and her, because she's kind of in love with him. She kind of has a crush on him, or like that, a very juvenile crush. But and the gruesome setting that is the turkey farm, because I can't imagine a worse setting, like a more brutish setting than gutting animals for a living. So I think Angela was right. It's a very sharp contrast between both of them.
But the thing is, like, I think the story focuses a lot on the characters and their relationships. For me, that it's something that you have in every company and in every business. So, and in a very, I think it's a very normal way and normal characters that you find in any business. So for me, that's why the story felt a little bit uneventful. Like nothing happened, just like the regular things that happen in life.
Yeah, it felt to me almost like she was trying to give us a picture of what life was like back then and how people were. And I felt like some of her comments were, she was, even as a 14-year-old, she noticed things. And yeah, talking about, how, well, they say these things, but then they do other things. And it was almost like a picture of like this certain group, like what life was like for them, what their concerns were. And yeah, it's very day to day, like very mundane, but
Yeah, but the characters felt, because I think because the story was so centered in the characters, as Andrea said, they were very, very believable, because I've known a lot of women like the two sisters, the two elderly women. I've known a lot of people like that. So I could see them talking to each other all the time, working with each other, complaining about their life, their family lives, and the things with their husbands, because none of their husbands seem very, very, very good either. So I could really see them. I could really believe they were real, and they went day by day like that, with that sort of attitude. I could see that.
Yeah, no, they seemed very real. They seemed, and yeah, what they talked about, how their lives were. I mean, yeah, exactly. They could be any. It's like those type of women. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, because I think we can all agree they're not the most likable of all the characters, but they are very, very, very realistic. You can find all women like that.
They were very realistic, and I think they were very believable also, because we had a wide range of a spectrum of people with different ages and different backgrounds, and that profiles, they have different psychological profiles, all of them. That's make them more realistic, because it's not like if you have written characters that are all more or less the same, that you confuse them, or no, each of them has its specific personality that they all of them are special. And you can see that in any workplace. I used to work a few years ago for DHL, and it was a big department, like with 30, 40 people, but everybody in the same room. And we had people that have been working there for, say, 15, 20 years, like they were before the doorbell. And you had people that had joined very, very recently, like for a few months. And some of them were old. Some of them were very young. And the thing is that the kind of dialogues that they have, as you were saying, remind me a lot of my workplace at the time, because the older people would say similar stuff of the people in the story. The younger people will behave in a different way. Some of them will be more sexual, like this Brian thing. Some of them were gay. It's like you had all the spectrum, and then you have the boss, which is his personality, right? In my case, it was a woman, but also with this boss personality. So you have all the range of humanity there concentrated in a workplace.
Yeah.
And like also the workplace is kind of claustrophobic. I mean, it's a kind of room when they do this gutting thing, I mean the turkey thing. So I think that makes that the personalities are more like a show, like when you are reading, you can, I mean, it's a thing that you are saying, like you can see the characters, but also because they are in this place that is so claustrophobic, it's small, like, I don't know how is this in English, but it's like las personalidades como que afloran más, are more like intense.
Yeah, also in that same line, it's because I believe it was mentioned that they had to be separated. Not everyone could do the same work. Some of them were gutting, some of them were killing, some of them were doing other things. I can't remember the technical names, but yeah, they were divided. And for example, the two older women were together, and then the main character and Herb were together, and then the young pregnant girl was on another had another task. So it's just like in an office or a company, you have a task to perform, and it doesn't matter whether you like the person you have to work with or not. You are forced to work along and work as a team. So yeah, it was that's the way the personalities were shown.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
By forced to work alongside.
I think it also works for the story itself, for the plot, because the big climax where everything happens, which is also like the conclusion, and it's not really a twist, but like the big event that happens at the end, which is the boss fighting Brian, it wouldn't have worked for a story that had been more active. Like if you have a sort of story where 1,000 things happens and there's adventure and action and a lot of emotions and etc. Suddenly this happened and it's like not a big thing. But in this story, it's huge. It's like the huge 7 in their working lives inside the Turkey place, because it's something that usually doesn't happen, and they have their drama, right? And it's because these day by day working routines are described in such a realistic way that you get into the mood of nothing ever really happens other than work, and how I do my work, how I do put my hand inside the turkey, and what do they say, and what they do comment about their husbands, and another day, and then another day, and then this huge thing happens, which is cool. I mean, it says a lot of good things about Munro.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was curious was because Herb seemed like such a good and nice guy, and then he brings this Brian guy in who, like the author said, he had to have known how he was. So it was interesting that he brought him in the first place. And then she made a comment in one of her reflections that I didn't quite understand, that maybe that Herb was avenging himself on them. And I thought, wow, I mean, why would he? Because in the story, I didn't get any reason why Herb would have any bad feelings towards them. So anyway, it was something that it left me with a question.
Maybe what I get out of it, maybe it's because there are some people who are always they're always bottling negative feelings up. They're always trying to be nice, to keep up a good face, to be easygoing. But then one day they snap, and suddenly all hell breaks loose because they've been bottling up things for such a long time that they can't stop venting about this happened and then this happened and then you did this to me. And I think it was, I understood it as something like that
Yeah.
her was like unable to behave the way Brian did, even the few times he was angry or was feeling negative emotions. So he was like, let him annoy them for me because I can't do this. So, but someone should
But
behave the way
I
it's
think the characters like her a little bit too much. Like I don't trust the judgment of the main character because she's a 14 years old girl and has a crush on this guy. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's impossible that that her is so perfect.
I was going to say this, and also she backs off from her own explanation when she's telling the story. Like she says something at the end, like, "Yeah, at the time I thought that Herb has done this like as a revenge, but then I don't believe that it was the case for blah blah or something like that." So I think she doesn't really know, and we don't know because she doesn't know, and she's the one telling the story.
Yeah, and the main question remains unanswered. Was Herb homosexual and having an affair with Brian or not? Because
the question is what Brian did.
Yeah, exactly.
also what Brian did, but also why did
Yeah.
Herb bring him in the first place, and why did he tolerate him when he was such a nice guy and Brian was such a toxic person in the work environment?
I have a theory, which is that Herb was in love with Brian or something like that, but not having an affair because Brian wasn't a homosexual. That's the reason Herb allows him to be lazy and procrastinate at the workplace and doesn't do anything about it. It's because he's in love with him. But Brian seems like the kind of guy that is sexual maybe towards women, which is why he does that to Gladys. And that's where the conflict comes. That's my theory.
Yeah,
because
that makes sense. Yeah.
because we never see the old woman seem to believe that Gladys and Herb have this kind of relationship where Gladys wants to catch Herb's attention, but he doesn't give it to her. But as the own narrator says, there's no proof of that because Gladys never shows any of those type of feelings against her for Herb. So the theory that the narrator has that he did that to Gladys because she wanted to be with Herb, I can't believe it. It's so far-fetched.
But then later she says maybe Gladys was interested. I feel like in some ways the author, like it seemed in some ways like she had things very clear, and in some ways it was like she was completely unclear about other things, you know? Like, I don't know. It was interesting.
Carlos.
So Adrian, we have your theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of many. Like, it could also be that Brian and Herb are having an affair, and what happened with Gladys was something weird. Like maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm more inclined to think that Brian is also attracted to women because of the sexual behavior he has. Because the only men there are Herb, all of the women, and the farmer and his son, and he only annoys the woman because the two older women even try to. I mean, they were very hostile to him at some points because of his annoying behavior towards women. So I believe either he was bisexual or heterosexual because that kind of misogynistic behavior he had was towards women mainly.
Another idea could be that he was gay, but that he was kind of like in a rebellious state. Like he liked to cause problems. So, you know, he knew that he could, you know, make sexual comments, maybe he didn't even do anything really bad to Gladys, but he knew, you know, if he did something, I don't know, like maybe he just liked to cause problems, you know, maybe he himself was, you know, troubled and he liked to stir things up. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression he was really attracted to any everybody at the office. Like it was two middle-aged women and like I don't know what Gladys was supposed to be, but I got the impression quite a bit older than him.
He's described as older than 30, but there's such a long.
Yeah, so we don't know. But yeah, my impression was just he's just kind of the type of person who gets off on like people reacting and being like all shocked. And it's hard because we don't know. Yeah, we have no idea what actually happens. Like maybe he was just said something that we would find innocuous, or he was trying to have a reaction, or maybe he was masturbating in the bathroom and she walked in or something. Like we have no idea. Like we have no idea what happened, if it was even directed towards her or if it was just like the situation. So it's hard to say.
That hadn't occurred to me, the masturbating in the bathroom thing. But now that you say it, it's very, very possible that something like that happened.
It sounds like something you would do.
Like something.
It occurred to me, but
no, like I mean, like he wasn't trying to do something to Gladys, but that she caught him doing something else, like
something inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which actually,
Fabian, you're so naive.
It's a fiction. Actually, nothing happened in the bathroom. By the way, hi. Sorry, I'm late.
Carlos, did you see my message? Because the meetup it said 7.
No,
that's
sorry.
not the reason you're late. Okay, never mind.
No.
Okay.
I had
See,
another.
it was not my fault.
It was a 5, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it was just that there was a mistake on the meetup event, and it said 7. So we were sending message to the people, and I think it's the one. It's also there's also the possibility that nothing happened at all between Gladys and Brian, and for some reason the boss thinks that it did. It's kind of reaching, but I don't know.
No, I really think it thought of that because he's not the most stable person. He's angry. He abuses emotionally. He emotionally abuses his son because he's all the time treating him horribly, and he's so unstable, volatile, and all the time in these moods that no one wants to deal with at the workplace. So I thought maybe it was something he deemed inappropriate. But to us, it wouldn't be.
And Gladys was her relative, like
he was his sister.
His sister.
But the theory that Brian was a relative as well for her it fits as well, right? Or did I miss something?
A relative.
Yeah, it's there. Like they don't know, or the narrator doesn't know why Brian is there. He says that maybe it's a friend or a relative of Morgan, I think.
But I think that's more because he works very badly. He has he I think he's a god too, but he doesn't work very fast. He annoys others, so she doesn't know why he was even hired in the first place. So that's why she thinks maybe he was a relative or something like Gladys that ended up there just because of his connections. That's what I got out of it, at least.
Yeah, they were just speculating like how he was related to her because I guess they didn't say.
It is funny because it's like we are like the two women gossiping
about what's happening.
Their sexual orientation.
Speculating about everything.
But with much nicer vocabulary.
Yeah, we're nicer to these fictional people than they are.
Yeah, actually, finish reading the story, we seen that it had continued. Like we could know more about the factory and what happened, and like an entire novel maybe. Which I guess is something very good to say about the story.
Yeah, I actually was intrigued by the characters. I thought each of them had his or their own story, because the women have the elderly women have their gossipy antics, and they are horrible family life because they have horrible husbands. They drink a lot. They sometimes are even abusive, and and they had a horrible father figure, but still they're in this cycle of, even the narrator recognizes it, that they educate their children just as their horrible father educated them. And so I think they're very intriguing to be characters in their own story. Also her, because he's so mysterious and so intriguing. We don't really know what's happening with him. Well, this Brian guy maybe, because also we don't know very little about him, but I just find him too unlikable to be of much interest. And the owner and his son, because also I don't know if I'm right, but she mentions that she knows the owner's son because they are at school together, and she hates him. She doesn't like him at all. So I'm intrigued. There's a story there. Why doesn't she like him? How does he behave? And how is it tied to his father? Because his father treats him horribly. So yeah, I think the characters would be each their own main character in their own novel. I think they're interesting enough.
Yeah, he's gonna
Also
be the heir of the company, so there is a lot of drama there.
Yeah.
Also, the old man is interesting. It's like
Oh my God,
nothing
the
in the
whiskey
story,
man.
but yes, it's so interesting.
Yeah, because it's also mentioned that the narrator knows him because they live in the same street, and it's like, what is that man up to in his daily life?
I mean, it was interesting with his son because she said at first she was worried about him because he was kind of mean at school. But then when she saw his father treat him so badly, she was like, oh, he's just like any other low-level worker. And then you kind of got the feeling that maybe the reason why he was so mean at school was because of the way his father treated him, you know? Like, it was, but yeah.
Yeah, it really made you, at least it made me empathize with him. Like, he has a reason for being this terrible after all.
Yeah, it was kind of sad, you know?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Kind of felt sad with him because also it must not be nice to work with your father and see that, as the narrator mentions, his father treats him so much worse than any other worker there in front of everyone. Everyone sees, everyone knows, and I think that's so sad and so problematic.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I guess we didn't know about the older man and the 14-year-old. We don't know anything about her family, but it seemed like a lot of the other people had kind of messed up situations, you know?
Yeah. Well, the whiskey man is the only one that seems to have either not a family at all or no family problems, or
yeah,
just
86
too much of a fan of whiskey to care.
I mean, you can imagine that gutting turkeys is not a vocational job. I mean, they do it because they have to.
Yeah, it's also mentioned that we don't know why he ended up there, because he says, no, it's because people wondered at first why he was working at the turkey farm at his age, and he was like, yeah, because I can't be without working. Working is my life. I need to do something, to be doing something. And I think that's so interesting because not many old people are like that.
I mean, it's being around people also. That's also important for old people.
Yeah, I wonder if it was maybe a sign of him not having any family, or his family, you know, they're never around or something. And so, yeah, I mean, for him, the only reason for living is work, and that's it.
And the whiskey thermal.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why he's drinking the whiskey. Because if you're 86 and you have to work, then maybe some whiskey goes there.
I think there's some old people that do that. They either keep working if they have a business of their own, or get some hobby, or even go back to class. Like on my university, there were some very old people that came to some classes, like specific classes that they like it. So I guess some people just want to be active and doing stuff.
Yeah, I have an experience like that because my best friend is doing an architecture degree, and she has a woman in her class that is so elderly. She's like 78, I believe. She's younger than my grandparents, but still, she's so old she could be my grandparent and her grandmother too. So she it's not that she's starting such a weird career as architecture, because other people, for example, old people study history or I don't know, geography, but no, architecture. And it's not that she wants to do an additional degree, or that she went to university and she works in something different. She wants to try this something new, but because she started the career at she started the degree when she was young, she never finished it, so she's still on it. And I was like,
Wow.
yeah. And she's been paying all these years, even one subject or two subjects, because she has nothing better to do. And I was like, that's crazy. And she's still there studying.
Learning is always good.
Yeah, but I found it weird.
I mean, if I had the money and the time to do that, I would do that. I would just like keep doing different degrees and like slowly over time.
Today
But yeah,
I'm doing
don't
a
have the money
psychology
for that.
class. Today I'm doing an English class. Every day a different subject.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, I can see that. Like when you are old and you are retired, maybe you are forced to be retired and you want to keep doing things and learning things and being around people. I could see that.
Yeah.
And besides, it's very, very good for their health also, physical and mental.
Yeah, it really helps you deteriorate at a slower rate.
Or not deteriorate.
Or not deteriorate
Let's be
at all.
positive.
Yeah.
you
be
cannot sound like
immortal.
you cannot
Stay
sound like
there.
it slows down death. You can.
Didn't mean for it to sound so bad, but it somehow did. But yeah, if I do reach 86 years old, like the whiskey man, I would want to have that active life. I think he's cool.
Maybe he gets some entertainment just being there, you know, around all the people and their drama, and you know, being 86, you don't really care, so you know, you just
I could easily see him like, tell me more, what happened?
It's like before television, so he had to go somewhere to like watch some drama.
He didn't have any other entertainment than that.
But I think that it happened a lot with countryside men. For example, in my village, my grandpa, for example, he needs to go to the countryside, and he is like 83, I think. And a lot of old men, I mean, that is not just a thing about learn new things like the universities, just go work because you have been doing it your whole life. So I find it so realistic, like this man with 86 years is going to the turkey farm.
Yeah, just get out of the house.
Yeah, but it's like going to work, like not just go to, I don't know, to the street, or like go working.
Yeah, but that kind of forces you to do it. I mean, otherwise you do it, you don't, maybe someday you're tired or you don't feel for it. This is something that kind of forces you to get out. So I think that's, for some people, it's useful.
It reminded me somehow of my aunt. She's a scientific researcher. She's always been doing this scientific research and everything. She's been living in America for so long. And she really had this sort of mad scientist vibe to her, because my mom told me that before the European Union, before transports and customs were improved, things between exporting things between the United States and Spain was so difficult, like in the 80s. And my mom had to sign forms for my aunt, for her to bring mice to test on from Spain to America, because mouses were alive, and they had such regulations, and she just couldn't, being an American, she just couldn't bring them freely buy them freely in Spain and bring them to America for research. They had to sign a lot of forms and everything, and my mom helped her. And I was like, that woman is a crazy scientist. And she's determined not to retire until she's like 75 or like that. and she's going to keep teaching at her university. And she's nearing 70, and she's still there working every day with people like 20 years old or like that, teaching. And I'm like, wow, that woman is immortal. She has the strength to deal with every day with students. I don't have it, and I'm their age, so.
That's
wait,
become more and more
really
usual though, because people are living longer. So it's not realistic to retire when you're 65 and somehow have your pension pay for 30 years or 35 years of not working. It's not really viable, even if you don't particularly want to work. It's more and more people are going to have to be working until they're 70, 80. I mean, the kids born now are expected to have an average lifespan of like 105 or something like ridiculous. Like, so that's going to change. I mean, we're not going to be retiring at 65 and
yeah, I don't
just
see it.
do nothing for 40 years. But
in Spain, legally now is more than 67, I think, the retirement age.
From people that retire now, right?
No, for you and me.
Oh, for us.
For us.
What?
Oh my God.
I thought it was 65.
No, they set up the law was reformed a few years ago, and like every year the date goes a bit behind, and I think it was until 2023 when it got to 67.
That's bullshit. Like I know that our lifespan is changing and how the market works and blah blah blah. But if we organize it well, our resources, we could retire at 65 and live at least 30, 40 years of just enjoying life. Like if we organize well as societies, like it's been working so far, retiring at 65 where everybody could retire and didn't have to work. It can still work if we did something about it.
But they explain the demographic pyramid is changing because the baby boomers are all going to be.
yes,
My mom is from the baby
now,
boomers generation, and she's the only thing she can talk about is when I retire in 1 or 2 years. And I'm like, yeah, you and thousands of other people that are from the baby boomer generation and have like 7 siblings, and we all will have to pay the cost of them retiring. So I think that's when the pyramid is going to shift, and it will no longer be sustainable anymore.
Still, I mean, I'm not going to keep talking about this because we start in the politics fields, and I don't want to go there. But countries like Norway have been adding to their state funds by exploiting oil factories and stuff like that. They have covered the retirement plans of their entire population for the next 100 years. So it can be done. Like it can be done the way we are doing it now.
but when we apply things like that, it's like Norway has the same population as the Comunidad de Madrid. We have to take things into perspective. I mean, I've known a lot of Norwegian families because I had Norwegian students living with me, and the 3 families that came to Spain to be at my house and everything, they had a private island. All 3 of them. What are the chances? All 3 of them had a private island, and they were like, yeah, and our neighbors have a private island a few miles next to ours. It's very cool. And I was like, I want to live there, please. I want a private island too.
I want a private island.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of Chile. I mean, the Norway sovereign fund comes from the oil exports, and I mean that's very, very few countries that have such a level of oil exports or some other source of richness and so little population. I mean, Norway is almost empty and has tens of thousands of little tiny islets in there that it is somewhat, let's say, easy to buy. I mean, so it's not a very, very common thing. I mean, I love Norway. Yeah, I've been there. In fact, I was there for tourism last year. But I mean, it's an example that is very, very difficult to follow.
Yeah. it's so different from us. I think there ought to be more animals in Norway than humans, but such a low rate. Like it must be like 5 cows to every single human there, because it's full of livestock. I've been a few times, and it's just countryside and bare and natural.
Yeah. I have friends who live in Norway, and they say Norway is a great country except for its inhabitants.
Oh no.
They say it's very difficult to relate to them. That's what they say. I was only there for 2 weeks, so I don't have much of an opinion.
The worst thing I learned about Norway was one day that I was at the station before taking a 9-hour long train. So I had to buy a bottle of water to go through that trip, because it was 9 hours on a train. It was my birthday. I drink a lot of water. I needed bottles of water for me to stay alive. And then I went to the station, and every bottle costed the equivalent of €7 for a bottle of water like this.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Always
And I was like,
expensive.
No, but the problem with society is the way they relate. I mean, for them it's okay, but for us it's different. Like my brother, he lives in Sweden, and he says that this 2-meter distance limit has allowed Swedish people to get together closer than they normally do. You know what?
They even welcome this sort of measures.
Yes, I mean, my Norwegian friend, for example, they put just an example. If you go to a small town and you ask, is there a post office here? People will answer, yes, and they walk away.
The social distance thing is true. I think the Northern Europe countries are probably the countries in the world that maintain more social distance normally.
Yeah.
After them, they come the Anglo-Saxons like the States and the UK, that they still have a lot of social distance. Then other countries in Europe. Then the south of Europe, like us, like Spanish, Italians, that we are close, but not so much as, for example, South America.
South America. I was going to say that.
South Americans say they are so close always. And Asia, of course, that they are like compressed.
Well, no, but not Japan.
Asians,
not Japan.
It's not so much because of character, such as South America, but because there's so much of them.
Yeah, they don't have space. They're very densely. The cities are very dense.
Yeah, so much density of population density, because it's not only China, but also, for example, Japan. Just because Japan is so small, they don't have enough living space for all those people.
No, but
and
Japanese people
Vietnam
don't
and
like,
all those kind of places.
Japanese people don't like touching each other or getting close to each other, except
They
in the
also
subway.
practice a lot of social distancing. For example, if you cough and you don't have any face mask on, people will talk to you and say, hey, you need to be more responsible. You need to buy a face mask and things like that, for example.
Well,
people don't go out of home if they have a cold. Well, us, if I tell my boss, I have a cold, I'm not going to work, he was going to look at me like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Well, there it's not acceptable to go at work.
It's so wrong in Spain that like I can't even understand why we do that. Like we just go to work being sick, but even if you don't go to work, you have to go to the doctor. Like you go spreading the virus around
that's
to the doctor
ridiculous.
office, and like because you need that paper from the doctor that says you are sick.
Yeah,
in other countries, as far as I know, it's not like that. Like in the States, you just don't go to work, right? If you can.
I'm saying the way it's organized here is stupid, but I'll take this 20,000 times over how it is in the States, where you have
because
zero
in the States you don't even have the healthcare to sign a paper.
Yeah.
If you decide to leave, it's completely dependent on your employer, whether you're going to have a job tomorrow or whether you have that time off, whether it's paid, whether it's not, whether it's completely at the whim of your employer. There's no government regulation. There's no rights to sick leave. So,
but still here it's very bad. For example, when coronavirus started, I worked in a very large office. When I entered in September, we were about 200, a very big office. But then we bought more office floors and we became 400. We doubled the company in the 6 months I've been there, or 7. So we're a lot of people. And then one day, one of the oldest workers here, she's a woman about 40 something. She comes and she has been sick for 3 days. And coronavirus has just started. She has a fever. She's coughing. she's feeling so ill, so bad, and she still comes to work. And my boss, that is the boss of all the facilities boss for all the office things, she starts scolding her in front of everyone in the office, like, you're sick and coronavirus is out there and you're coming here, please go home. And she was like, but I'm well enough to work. And my boss was like, no, go home. It's not about the money because we pay you, so go home, don't worry about things. And she's like, I can't leave my work undone here. And she's like, work at home but don't come. And then everyone was talking about, okay, we're going to be infected with coronavirus now because we have one person here who's ill and has all the symptoms. We're all doomed.
Yeah, I don't think we have here this mentality of being responsible when we are sick, of not spreading the virus. It's like, I'm sick, but I still can go to work, so I go. Or I'm sick, but I still can go to the movies, so I go to the theater. You know, it's like, what the fuck, you know?
It's the mentality. It's not the problem, because this time the company was not the problem, because my company sent me home even before the coronavirus, and they're not the ones paying me, but they still told me, they gifted me a laptop and they told me, go home. Even if you don't have any work to do, go home. We're closing the office because we don't want anyone to be infected. And it was before they were forced to. And so this woman still came to work. Why? Because of the mentality, not because of the company.
I have to say,
the way we think.
Sorry, I think in Spain the company culture is not that positive as the one you show with your boss. I mean, I think that person has the mentality, but normally in Spain, let's say the well-being of the employees is not so high in a pedestal at all, especially the mental well-being.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the company, but most companies don't care about you. You are like a number. I think that's pretty common in every country in the world, more or less, right? Like, to work for profit, that's all.
Yeah, you're an asset and nothing more. You're like a computer in the company. You're needed to work, but...
Well, I think there are some multinationals when they're located in Spain where they treat people in the company culture is better as far as getting courses for education for the employees and having better conditions. I think the ideal thing is to work for one of these multinational companies and live in Spain. That's the best life plan.
My company is a multinational company, and I was and my parents were astonished because they have yoga for employees, they have mindfulness for employees, they have massage for employees, and I was like, what?
You see, it's not a Spanish company, so you see, that's what
it's not a Spanish company. It's American.
Yes,
it's an American company. But I was like,
curiosity.
That's cool. But just before I had been working in American Express for a very short while, their offices in Spain, and they had been voted for, I think, 4 consecutive years best place to work in Spain. It was horrible. It was horrible. I hated every second of it. And I was like, okay, these awards don't count for much because people here aren't happy. I am unhappy. It's not a good company to work for. So I think these things are very relative.
At the end of the day, I guess that it depends on the people that surround you. Like if your direct boss, like your superior, immediate superior, is a nice person, you'll probably have a good time. And if it's an asshole, you're going to suffer the consequences. It's like on Munro's story, like it depends on the people surrounding you and your coworkers and how your boss is. If they have a different boss, then you may be lucky. Even if the company culture is different, it's the people that make the day.
Yeah, also in the farm, they have this horrible boss. And it's like, of course, he would hire someone unlikable as Brian because he's unlikable himself.
But that's also a debate, no? I was thinking about, these like Silicon Valley companies like Google, like they have like all kind of facilities and playgrounds and everything. And of course, I guess they have courses and gymnasiums and it's a debate like at the end it's making you stay more time at work rather than going home and going to your gym and going to your whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like you have a lot of resources there, which is nice, but then that's kind of implying that you're spending like 24 hours a day at work. Like there's a room where you can sleep and then you can go back to work and you can
you can do yoga.
It's a subtle way of when you say, but I can't stay here, I have to go to the gym, I have to be with my kids. They're like, well, we have a playground here, we can leave the kids here and keep working, or you can go to the gym here and then keep working, because it's like a subtle way to keep you at work. The more hours, the better.
I lived there in Silicon Valley for 5 years, and actually, I mean, you do that no matter if they give that to you or not. I mean, people are used to do that.
That's a good point.
So, but for sure, they don't do it for the benefit of mankind. They do it for their own benefit, that's for sure. But I mean, that's very common. All-nighters, work hard. Well, that's type of culture that is also not very positive in many aspects on the human side of it.
Yeah, no, I think the tech sector in the States, definitely. My sister worked in the States in the tech sector, and you know, she tells me, yeah, it's very normal to work 60 hours a week. That's a normal work week. And I'm like, is that a normal work week? And she's like, and there are some jobs where you work 80 hours a week. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
But one positive thing though is that they are flexible as negotiating the conditions. So I have a colleague of mine, we studied together there. He went to work to Lockheed, the aerospace company over there in Silicon Valley. And he said, he negotiated, he says, I want 1.5 months of vacation a week, and I want to work no more than these hours. Pay me less if you want. And they say, okay. So he's having a good life. So I mean, it's at least they have that flexibility, but it's
if you can negotiate.
Very few people do that. Well, in Spain, you cannot negotiate anything. They tell you this is what there is, and that's and if you don't take it, somebody else will. They don't care.
I think negotiations only happen in a high level. Like the usual workers can't negotiate their contracts. Only when you start rising in the hierarchies, when you can negotiate the salaries, the conditions, etc. Or if you are doing a specific job that not many people can do. Like you have a specific set of skills that they require, then yeah, maybe you can say, okay, I accept, but you have to accept my conditions too. Otherwise, you just do whatever you are. So.
Well, I think that one difference between Spain and other countries is the red tape of Spain. Here in Spain, you have to change something in a worker. You have to do a lot of red tape. It's really complicated. In other countries, it's much easier. This kind of facilities to do changes.
Sure.
But is Spain so much more red tape than, for example, other European countries? I mean, for example, I haven't worked in other European countries, but I know that in Belgium, to rent an apartment, it's so difficult to get all the paperwork done. I mean, there's a guy who comes and checks whether you have how many, they count and photograph all the holes in the wall to make sure that when you get out of the apartment, there's not one single hole. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork that in Spain we don't have. So I'm not sure if Spain is that different from other countries.
So there's actually studies on bureaucracy worldwide, and if I remember well, France and Spain were the two most bureaucratic countries in the world. Like
France is so much horrible than us, because there the bureaucratic grand scheme of things has a life of its own. For example, el sistema de pensiones. The retirement system, they have a retirement system for every public profession with different conditions that they are expected to maintain and even improve over time. It's unsustainable because it's a special regime for every one of them. And it's like, for example, I'm a bus driver, want to retire, but then a taxi driver has a better retirement than me. And it's not fair. So I complain, and the French government is in over its head because they don't know what to do to get everyone to accept their own terms.
I disagree that the bus drivers don't have a better retirement plan than anybody else. Like one of the things that this crisis is showing us is that the essential workers sometimes are the less well paid, like for example, clerks. And that they still have a lot of benefits, or at least as the person that has the most, and even more, because this is just No. Like if someone has living a life where he has a lot of money, a lot of profit, a lot of benefits, another person has been working very hard for a pittance, then the person that has been living for a pittance deserves a good retirement plan. The other one, whatever, he can save or whatever. But this is just ideal.
Yeah, but it's also that it's not the fact that a bus driver doesn't need to have a lot of retirement funds. It's not that. It's just that everyone having a different retirement plan is such a big mess waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Such a big one.
No, it implies a lot of delays. My aunt is retiring in France. She was a doctor there for the last, I don't know, a few years. So she's getting part retirement plan in Spain and part retirement plan in France. And the bureaucracy has been horrible. Like she's been for like 2 years now or 3 years processing all the paperwork of it. And only until last month they granted the results. The retirement thing in France is quite complicated.
It's horrible. But not only, apart from its specifics, it's the bureaucracy of it. It's this whole structure that no one can touch, no one can change, because otherwise it will all come tumbling down. Because no one knows how to understand it as a whole and improve it. It's impossible. It's so big.
Yeah, I was Adrian, when you mentioned Spain and France were the two worst in the world, I mean, the listings I've seen in the past were like best places to start a company or to something related to starting a business. Was that type of list? Because I don't recall Spain was bad on that, or it was on some other aspect.
No, starting a business like for entrepreneurs and stuff, I don't know. I don't recall any of that. This was like dealing with the administration, basically. Okay. For everything that where you need a civil worker to do something for you, how complicated it was. And in Spain seems to be like a lot of steps that you must follow.
Okay. I remember that I thought Spanish bureaucracy was very bad, and then I started watching a channel that is from Ecuador, and they do sketches, comedy sketches, and they have a lot poking fun at the administration in Ecuador because it's so horrible that sometimes you need to bribe people for them to work and do their job so that you can present your papers, because it runs so badly that people need to give money to the people to do their jobs and do things right. It's crazy.
In England, it's not that great either. The retirement situation is not that great either, because I worked there for a period of time, and even when I was working in the same sector in education, because each company have a different retirement plan, and I have to spend 2 years in one of the places. They say, oh, you are not going to have retirement because you spend less than 2 years, and it was like 1 month, and I was like, yeah, but I worked for 4 years. Yeah, but you have different retirement plans. And I was like, yeah, but this is education. Is it the same kind of job, but different companies? And they were like, no. Yeah, I didn't have any retirement. I asked for the money, then I pay. Yeah, they give me the money, but I don't have any retirement, even working there for 4 years. It's bureaucracy. Each country has their own things, and not all countries are the worst. Like Spain is the worst, and all countries are best. Because I thought
all of them are bad in its own way.
I tend to criticize Spain a lot. Sometimes Spain deserves it, and sometimes not. But I think in the bureaucracy field, I think we could do much better.
Yeah, but it's true. We always, of course, criticize our own country, because we're not about to criticize another one. It would be entitled. I don't know. For example, I'm not going to criticize Canada because I've never lived in Canada.
Nobody criticizes Canada because they are so nice.
Canada is cool.
Everybody criticizes the States.
Canada is cool. It's not good to criticize Canada, but it's good to criticize, I don't know,
the United States. In Spain, everybody criticizes the United States.
Yeah, I think in Europe, everybody criticizes the United States.
Exactly. I mean,
the United States, but they also praise them because they have different chocolate flavors and different M&M flavors and different kind of Fanta flavors.
It is weird. When I came here, I was like, it's the same brand, it's the same product, but it tastes different.
In fact, there is
So
this.
yeah, there's always something to criticize and something to praise another country for.
I think the States is quite easy to criticize too. So.
Oh my God!
I mean,
yeah.
we make ourselves easy to criticize sometimes.
If you hear anybody criticizing Spain anywhere outside of Spain, normally it's a Spanish person traveling, because Spanish people are very critical of the country, except for the food. For the food, we think it's the best in the world.
Because it is.
If you complain about Spanish food, you deserve to die. We are like that. We have this attitude like, don't mess with Spanish food and Spanish culinary tradition.
No, we'll have people to get along with a Spanish person, to be good friends. First thing, tell them you like Spanish food. You have gained a lot already.
And you have to understand, well, what are tapas? You can't call everything you see tapas. No.
What happens to me with Spain is that I see its flaws, and I always thinking that it could be improved, like we could make things much better, and so I say it out loud. But if someone from a different country attacks Spain somehow, or says something wrong about Spain, I immediately turn defensive, and I don't know why. But it's like, no, but it's my country, and it's south. And I think that's happened to
I think
a lot of people from different countries.
Mechanism in general, like you can criticize your family all that you want, but you don't want anyone outside your family criticizing your family. It's like,
yeah, because even if you have a dysfunctional family, when someone comes in and says it, you're like, okay, I can't say it because it's my family, but you can because it's not yours.
Yeah.
Things like that. For example,
it's a mess, but it's my mess.
Yeah, if I travel to America and I see someone in the United States criticizing Spain, and that person is American and is not Spanish, I would be mad. And I would yell at them like, what are you doing to my Spain? And I'm not a very patriotic person, but it's like, what are you talking about?
And the other way
talking
around.
trash about my country or your country? I can talk so much trash about, and I don't, because it's the same for every country. You can say a lot of bad things about them, but it's in bad taste when you're not living there and it's not your country and you're not being born in. Because it's in bad taste. It doesn't look good. It's bad. Don't do it.
And the other way around, we have two people here from the state that probably can confirm that the United States have been very critics with themselves through history. Like they have a lot of counter cultural movements and social changes and etc. But if I, from Spain, go to the States to tell them, no, you're doing this and this wrong, even if I'm right, which I may be right because I see the flaw, who am I to say so, right?
No, I don't mind if people criticize the United States as long as as if it's correct, if it's coming out of a place of facts and knowledge.
Exactly.
If it's coming out of it because it's trendy and I heard I'm gonna criticize this country even though I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, then I find it annoying. But I find that annoying about anything. But if it's an actual genuine criticism based on facts, then I don't mind at all. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
that is more. In Texas, I will shoot you.
Wellington case, it might be fine, but otherwise it's like, I turn petty. I'm sorry, I turn petty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you though. Like, if it's criticism, like coming from a place of knowledge and coming like in a, I don't know, like in a constructive way, and just talking about issues or whatever, I have no problem. If it's cool to criticize the States and that's why I'm doing it, or it's something that's obviously, then that's when I get offended. Yeah.
There is respectful criticism and there's a different type that is more like criticize to feel yourself better.
Yeah, you need to have constructive criticism worth sharing. If not, not going to listen. I'm sorry, not very interested.
But I have to say, I don't think it's something that happens very often. I think when I meet somebody from France, I don't tell them, your country sucks because of this and that. I think people are polite enough to. I mean, for me, for example, living in the United States with a lot of foreign students also, the only things I've heard about Spain that were not positive, and in fact were kind of more prejudiced, it was about the macho culture in Spain and so on. Which, I mean, there is some, but compared to many of the countries, the people I was talking to, it was not so bad.
Yeah, I don't know where that criticism can come from. I think they associate I think they confuse Spain with South America countries or something like that. Like, I don't see this macho culture as much in Spain as in other European countries. And I'm talking about European countries. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends.
But it is the
It
image,
depends.
though. That's the image
I
they
guess
have.
it depends. Maybe in Madrid you don't see as much, but in other places.
Are you
But
talking
it
about the
exists
Sevillanos?
for sure.
I mean,
It's
it exists to a
the
degree
number
in
of
every
people-
place. But
Yeah, I mean, it's 'cause
if you
everywhere
compare
was.
Madrid to Berlin or Paris, I don't think we're any worse off. And you take a small village in the mountains in Spain, you have to compare it with a small village in the mountains in France and Germany. I think there is not that much difference. I mean, at least when I go to international committees for technical things, and in Spain, the Spanish delegation always has more women than from almost any other country.
It's true on a government level. Sorry.
But then, I mean, Germans are quite well known for being very sexist. But it's interesting because, yeah, when you hear about that kind of macho, it's always Spain. You never hear of Germany, but they're actually known for being quite sexist.
For example, the worst macho I can think about in Europe are the Italians. Not Spanish. Italian men are so suave, so mujeriego, such womanizers, each and all of them. I mean, I've had Italian men flirt in front of me when I was 6 years old. I'm flirting with women in front of me, and I was like, can you stop hugging her and kissing her when she doesn't want to? I'm 7 years old, and I don't want to see it. Things like that, because I was in an organized group of travelers, and there were people from Spain with locals from Italy, and the Italian guys were all, the young guys were all flirting so much with the girls, and I was like, I'm 6 and I don't want to see this. And it's every other time I went to Italy, for example, I went with a group of friends to Rome. There were 4 of us. Every time Italian guys trying silly pickup lines, and you were like, can you stop, please? I just want to walk down the street normally without any guys yelling things at me, please. So things like that. And I think Italy is the worst country in that.
Yeah, I don't know where the Spanish things comes from, because the first time that I started listening to this and with talking with people, like for example from the States, that will tell me, oh, but you have such a sexist culture in Spain, I will say, yes, we have it, because I see it, like we have so many flaws, and I accept that we are still a very patriarchal society and we have a lot of work to do. So I will say yes. But then you start comparing to other countries in Europe, the public debates they have, the people you meet and how they act and how they behave, and you think, oh my God, but in Spain we are like years ahead of them in terms of sexism. Like we are doing very well. Of course, we have a lot of work to do, but I don't know. I think that since some other cultures, like for example, all the ones associated with the reggaeton, for example, are so sexist, they associate Spain with that too somehow. I don't know.
The Spanish,
I don't know that you're really in the best position to be judging, to be honest, as a guy. Like, you're not going to be experiencing it. So it's easy for you to say, no, it's perfectly fine.
That's true. No, I'm a male, I'm white, and I'm living in Spain, so I have a lot of privilege.
The image of Spain abroad, I think, was set in the 20th century, and Spain, I think, has changed a lot over the last 40 years.
That's true.
I think it's one of the countries that has made a bigger leap in these kind of topics. So I think that at the end, that's what you mean, that we've improved so much in so little time compared to other countries. I think that's for sure.
Yes.
But I think that also a lot of the vision that other countries have from us is very like old Spain kind of thing, where all of the women are dancing flamenco and all of the men are bullfighting, and that's stupid and crazy, and especially not in Europe, but especially in the States, I don't know. And people also compare us a lot to South America, and every South American country is different, and they're different from us a lot. Because, for example, I've had people I know travel to America and say, yeah, I'm Spanish, and they were like, oh yeah, so you're Hispanic, and they were like, no, I'm white, can't you see me? I'm white, it's a different race. It's not that one is better and one is worse, it's that we're European and we have different laws and different customs than South America. And they are like, no, don't understand. And I guess that's the thing, that they have this different and erroneous vision of us that doesn't match the current reality right now.
I think also sexism plays out differently in different countries, and sometimes it's very easy to see it in another culture and not to see it in your own, because I mean, I don't really honestly see Spain any more sexist than the United States, and especially living abroad, and when I go back I see things that like I didn't see before, and I think it's just, it plays out in different ways in the two and different cultures.
I agree. Although I think for the brand of Spain it would be good to have a female prime minister.
Yeah,
we can have a female president.
We're one of the only countries that has never had one, and it's like crazy.
No, there are many countries. You can look it up in the.
Yeah, but many countries.
It's funny. There are several Muslim countries that have had a female prime minister.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, Indira Gandhi, please. Why don't we have an Indira Gandhi here? Or something like that. I don't know, but we don't have even many female candidates. The only one I can think about is Rosa Diez, please.
But we did have a gay prime minister, though. Not many people can say that.
What?
Did we?
A gay prime minister.
Rajoy. Rajoy, everybody knows that.
I knew it was going that way. I was expecting that.
I was like, no, we haven't.
I mean, come on, everybody knows that. It's not news.
Well, I mean, we have had gay ministers and a lot of more female ministers than male.
Yeah, but I don't want a minister.
That's the last step. The last step is missing.
But people abroad don't see them. They only see the prime minister.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, Spain, the government-wise, it's actually one of the best countries in the world as far as male to female ratio. But it's true that it's not. I don't know. That's not talking about senior positions. It's just talking about overall who's in the government. So
yeah. And it's kind of funny also because in Spain, the unions also, they talk a lot about having more female on the hyper, but there's no union boss ever that didn't have mustache. They're all guys also.
Straight white males.
Women can have mustaches too.
It was a way of talking, sorry. I didn't mean to not being inclusive.
Yeah, they're all. I remember a radio show I watched that they were talking about the Senate, and they were all saying, as a requisite for being a senator, it's in Spain. It seems that you have to be a man, very big, very fat, and having a mustache and do nothing for a living, but sit there at the Senate and. I'm falling asleep. It was so funny because everyone thinks that the Senate does absolutely nothing. It was so funny to watch.
Dude, I had a female young voice, so that person.
I remember the female senator, right? The Canadian
my
one.
boss was a senator and was young and was female and was feminist. She was very
but
weird.
The joke was so funny. They made it at a time when a news report had come out. They had caught a lot of senators asleep during a session, and they were all.
That's because the sessions are way too long and way too boring. I agree.
Anyways, I think there's no country in the world that I can think of that is perfect regarding the genders topic. Like all of them have to work.
I was thinking about that the other day. But it's like. I don't know. I'm not sure if you can find any country at all that is like feminist or like that has not like sexism in a way.
Of course, all of them have it in some way. I remember people seem to be thinking a lot in recent years that the Northern European countries were the way to go in the feminist politics. For example, they have a lot of new laws. They've made a lot of efforts against sexism and to benefit women. But then they have one of the highest rates of sexual violence
domestic violence
ever. So it's like, one thing is better than our country, but the other rate is worse. So they're all balances out. Even if some countries are better than us in some aspects, they will be worse in some others.
Yeah.
So yeah,
maybe the church was right. Wasn't there a bishop that said that women?
You saying the church is right? Is something wrong? You have coronavirus or something?
There was this bishop that said that women independence, like the women emancipation, was the culprit. It was the fault of this independence of physical abuse and sexual violence from men to women, because they were being independent and have agency.
But
Which is probably true.
Who could argue against that?
It's also hard with statistics
I don't
like
want
that
to research who
because
said that and why.
it's hard to know with statistics like that because it could also be that they tend to believe women more. So if a woman comes in and says, I'm being hit by my husband, then they say, okay, yes, and you're part of the statistics. Whereas in other countries where maybe it's even worse, maybe you don't even go to the police or you don't bother because they're not going to do anything anyway. So it's reported cases. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it's like you don't
maybe
really know.
it's that. For example, I'm sure that if you compare it, Norway has a very small population. So maybe if you compare Norway with Mexico in the number of sexual abuse cases or sexist related cases, maybe of course Norway is going to be much bigger because they have so little population that when comparing it to Mexico, it's so much more cases that get, and also because so much more cases will get reported, while in Mexico no one comes forward because of the repercussions and the violence against women, especially those who report any sort of abuses. So of course the ratings are going to be skewed.
But don't bother. I mean, it was a bishop that said it. Don't worry about it. Who cares?
We have to take his word for it. For his word is the word of God.
Well, you know,
he has a lot of experience in domestic issues.
He came from Vatican City, one of the most egalitarian countries.
Because there are no women.
There are no women. So there's no sexual abuse towards women because there are no women.
They have been eradicated,
That's why ratings do have to be taken with a grain of salt. You have to analyze them and say, well, this may be because of that, this, and that. Well, I think Mo is right. I have to always look at it from a skeptic point of view.
In anthropology,
no, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. In anthropology, there are just studied some societies like tribes that have been matriarchal and where the organization of the social structures, at least on paper, were not sexist. I don't know, I wasn't there to check or do an anthropological research.
Wasn't there to analyze the repercussions.
Like it's feasible, it can happen.
I was going to say, in any case, if there is any, I mean, it's very well known that the correlation doesn't mean causation. Two things happening in the same place, there's 1,000 ways in which that can happen. It doesn't need to be one the cause of the other one, and especially in social issues. So, I mean, I think I wouldn't care about what they have to say about that.
Also, I read a lot of speculative fiction, like science fiction and fantasy, and there have been so many fantasies lately that have matriarchal societies. And I read about them, and I'm always like, this wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But it's fun to read because it's such a different universe, because things are so much different when these authors imagine a different history for the world and a more matriarchal and more feminist point of view. So I always enjoy them, even if they're not always done well. But they're a nice change of pace, I guess. You see things in a different kind of point of view.
I don't know. Do you think it would be better?
I think the better way is not having any patriarchal or matriarchal at all. Just,
I fully agree. That was my answer.
No one has any gender issues, and that's all. We're all we don't have any gender at all, and that's fine. We're an alien society. There are no men or women. We're just are.
And we will reproduce through spores.
There's also some theories towards that thing that sound like science fiction, but it's already happening somehow. Donna Haraway wrote a manifesto like maybe 30 or 40 years now, like it's getting older, about it was called a cyborg manifesto, and she was talking about how new technologies were opening new fields for feminines and how humans were evolving into a place where we were so surrounded by technology that the gender was much more fluid. Like not only because online you can do whatever, it's because with all the, I don't know how to explain, all the technology that is surrounding us, we can transform our bodies in a way that couldn't happen before, and therefore the cyborg. And the idea is that the gender gets less and less important the more time happens.
I think that's a possibility because there is a difference. I mean, sex is different in that gender. Gender is more about the social aspect of what a woman and a man is. So in that way, I think it could be even good, like we are going to a gender fluid kind of society. I think it could be a step forward.
I think in an ideal world, we could each have our own gender. For example, we are a man, we identify as a male. We are a female, we identify as a woman. Also gender fluid people, but also that being of a certain gender doesn't mean you're less important, or you have less rights, or you have to abide by certain social rules and social traditions, but that you matter just as much as any other person. So it matters what gender you are because you're different from another who identifies with a different gender, but it also means that you have the same importance and the same society treats you the same. But that's an ideal world, so it would never happen.
Yeah. I once read a book. It was from Luis Alegre, who was in Podemos, but he's like a philosophy teacher, and he writes about very interesting topics, and he writes about homosexuality. And one of the topics that he said in the book is like we are like going to a society that is, or like we have a lot of like labels from like very different kind of sexual orientations, gender identities, whatever, or like the other way around. We are in a society that we have no like labels because everything is more fluid. So there are like two different paths.
Yeah, I guess hopefully at some point in the future there will be more fluid and won't really matter your gender as much. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna see it. Because you look at the pattern of history, I mean, everything has changed very quickly, but when you're actually living in it, it feels so slow because there's still so much stupid, I don't know, it's so ingrained in us, just that these, like, even if we don't want it to be like, this is what men do and this is what women do and this is for men and this is for women and all sorts of things that are just so stupid when you think about it, but it's still just there.
Yes, I mean, both in technology and the sense of society, it takes generations for this type of change.
Yeah.
So.
You're muted, Adrian.
Yeah, which is very well shown in the text in Alice Munro's story, because they both genders have
we'll come back.
specific patterns.
But yeah, it's very well reflected. now that we're back at it.
Good choice for the short story. It granted a good debate.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Because the last one, people didn't really like it, so I was hoping.
But still, the discussion was good, even if we didn't
that's
like
the
it.
important part.
Yeah, that's the important part, but it's better when people also like it.
But this thing about mystery with labels, I mean, with sexuality or woman, men, blah, 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 it was in the book. I mean,
Yeah,
getting
it was.
women gossiping about this is actual society. Like,
Yeah, and all these issues on gender and homosexuality and social issues are also in the short story, so it all ties up quite nicely. I agree. Wasn't planning on this, but I chose it because I hadn't read it. I had read because there was actually I chose this story because there was an article of a man who was a fan of Alice Munro and ranked all of the stories, like the ones that were better, the ones that deal with these topics, and he did it in an Academy Awards type of way. It was very funny to read. I can send you the link if you're trying to read anything from Alice Munro again. It was like best shocking twist, this story. And he was very, very passionate. He was like, because I'm such an Alice Munro fan, and I was like, wow. He's
But you could do
passionate
that
for
in
her.
Ciervo Blanco,
And-
do like a award show.
Yeah, he did
best
like that. He was
short
like,
stories during the quarantine awards.
quite old. He didn't. I think he was in a reading rush of Alice Munro after she won the Nobel Prize. So I guess it's because of that. And he was like, for example, best overall story, and then he said best story with killer twist, best story with relatable characters. He was like that, ranking all of the stories, and this one was the one that was more optimistic at the first time you read it, but the more you thought about it, was more depressing. Yeah. And I don't see it at all, but it was really good. So I'm glad he recommended it.
I don't see any reason to be optimistic, but I don't see either any reason to be pessimistic.
Yeah, I don't either, but it's what he said. So, and there was another one that was just the opposite. That was more depressing, but the more he thought about it, the more optimistic he became. So it was quite the contrast. But I chose this one because it was one of the few ones that got repeated and won a lot of mini awards and were available to read online. But he also wrote that this one was one of the more the more popular ones, the one that most people like the most. So I guess it's different from the ones you read, Adriana and Colleen, and I don't know the other person who read it and didn't like it.
Yeah, it said that for what I saw, it seems that it was quite critically acclaimed. This story, like it, people liked it, the critics and the readers.
Yeah, that's what the man said in the article about the stories. So yeah, I think it was a good story. I am glad you also liked it.
Well, actually, most of us, when we started talking about it on the first round, we said, well, it was okay, nothing impressive. But as usual, the more you talk about the story, the more you think about it, the more you like it.
It remains to be seen if you can arrive to a discussion saying, I like the story, but then when the discussion gets going, you actually don't like it at all. It hasn't happened before, right? It hasn't happened to anyone yet. Maybe one day it will.
But in the beginning you like, but after you don't like.
Yeah,
it has happened to me with the. You remember when we read On the Road? That I don't remember the book because I read like 1 year ago, and you were like destroying the book, and I was thinking, oh my god, I didn't remember this thing.
What was it about it that you were like, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot about this thing because it was so bad. I can't remember. I think it was the treatment of women or something like that you were so scandalized about.
It was like them having sex with underage girls.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
That was so funny. Yeah, that's true. You were like, yeah, what I remember of the book was fine. And then when we were talking about the underage sex, you were like, I can't believe I forgot this. I hate this. Oh yeah, I
I
forgot
was
about
thinking
it.
I have to read other time this book because
Yeah, because it somehow slipped past your radar the first time.
You omitted intentionally.
Maybe
no,
like
didn't happen.
Selective memory.
Yeah.
What book
I
are you-
just keep like the good things of the book and I forgot all the terrible things.
that's the good thing. See, I did the same. When I was trying to think about it, I was like, yeah, I don't remember. And then Mo remember the underage girls, and I was like, yeah, that happened.
what book are you talking about? On the road?
On the
by
road.
Jack Kerouac.
John Q.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah, John Kerry.
John
you like
Kerouac.
it?
Jack Kerouac.
Did you like it? No.
It was
Had
pretty.
mixed reviews.
Oh, I hate it when I read it.
The first time I tried to read it, I couldn't. I didn't like it. But reading it, whatever, it was a month ago or whenever we did the
Yeah.
discussion, and it's like, I liked it, but I would have liked it more as a short story, I think, or as a novela. It was like too
Too long,
repetitive.
dragged out, right? Few people
Yeah.
thought like Mo, and we saw also kind of more contemporary issues with it, such as the underage sex thing, the drugs thing, and I think the last thing was the treatment of women, because there are a lot of infidelities towards women, a lot of so I abandon you and I go back to this wife and their children and things like that we didn't like at all, and the writing style that was a bit meh, not very remarkable, and a bit boring. But the concept was, I think it was cool. For me, it was cool. The journeys across America, the road trip thing was cool, but no one really liked it a lot.
I haven't read the
I
book.
think it had its time and we kind of missed it. So it's hard
But
to read
you
it now.
You don't like it because you
we're
don't.
quite
you feel-
late to the party.
Yeah.
But you don't like it because the main character is despicable, or he does things that you don't. I mean, I haven't read it, okay, so I don't have an opinion that you don't agree with. Because I mean, sometimes the book has a bad character, but it's still a good book. So
Well, it's not, because this time all the characters are real people. So if you don't like them, you don't like the author. So
well,
The book is a biography, like a travel.
yeah, I know it's a personal
journey.
account, but I mean, do you have to like the author to like the book?
I mean, my problem with it was
I don't
just
know.
that it was repetitive.
No.
After a while.
Repetitive.
there's
Okay,
some
that's a different
authors
thing.
I hate,
Yeah.
whose books I like, but there are also books that my general experience has dampened because of the author's actions. For example, Harry Potter. I don't like the author of Harry Potter or the things she does, and I remember reading them as a kid, enjoying them a lot. But after the author has a Twitter account and starts saying all sort of things I don't agree with, and being unlikable, and changing my opinion on her books because of her attitude, I like it a lot less. So yeah, sometimes it changes my opinion on a book. Not frequently, but it can. I can't control it. I wish I could separate them both, but I can't.
You have to, because I don't know, all artists are problematic. Like if you're a really big fan of something, it's better not to know anything about the person making it, because there's always something horrible. Rich people are horrible, artists are horrible, people in general are horrible. You're always going to find something wrong. So it's like,
I want to wear that t-shirt. Rich people are horrible. There's nothing you can do about it. So
Okay, I want to be horrible then. But I was going to say, there was an article recently that recently, a few months ago, that there was the theory or books that people say that people, in order for them to be a genius, is very likely that they will be horrible persons.
Also, to be successful, you have to step on people. You have to be a little bit ruthless to be successful. So
yeah,
but they mean to their own family, not to your competitors.
Yeah, like being a horrible person per se.
Like
not,
like
not
Einstein.
in your way to success.
Like Einstein, he treated his wife as shit. And they put that type of example, not as somebody trampling on competitors. I mean, I'm not saying that I agree with the theory because I don't know that much about the life of the geniuses, but they said that it was very common apparently.
It fits with the.
Feels like an excuse.
It could be, but it fits with the prejudices or this stereotypical image that we have for nerdy people not having social skills. Like apparently, if you are a programmer, can't deal with people outside home, and it may be that some parts of our brain can be good for something, but then if they are good for this, they can't be for other things.
It reminded me of a theory that was what we were talking about, but it's a different one. That is authorial intent. That is that the moment you, as an artist, and especially an author, publish something, a book, a work of fiction, can be a TV series, can be a video game, but a piece of fiction, there are two opposing sides. One says that the work still belongs to the author. So what the author says after finishing the book is law. For example, Jack Kerouac says that he is Sal Paradise, the main character of On the Road, and that everything that happened in the book was what happened in real life. And so, as readers, following this theory, we have to believe that when we read the book On the Road, because the word of the author is the word of it is law, because he created that book and whatever he says about that book is the truth. But there's another one, a very recent one, and more applied, more characteristic of this age. That is that once an author publishes some type of work, that work belongs to everyone who reads it. So everyone can have its our own interpretation of it, and it doesn't mean it's false just because it's different from what the author intended. Because the moment it leaves the author's hands and becomes public, it can be ours too in our own way. We can make our own version of it. For example, it doesn't mean that because Jack Kerouac said that he was Sal Paradise and that everything On the Road happened in real life, it doesn't mean that I can think that if I don't want to believe Jack Kerouac and his friend were pedophiles, I can't believe that the part of underage sex with teenage girls is not true, because I want to believe that the author agrees. I want to have a vision of the author that agrees with my moral and personal values. So that doesn't mean because Jack Kerouac says otherwise and he's the author, my interpretation of the book is not true. It means that I can have my own interpretation and share it, and no one has to correct me and say, but the author said otherwise, because it's not outright stated in the book. So I can say otherwise and pretend otherwise. So it's kind of this theory, and I am forced to agree to it because it's mostly thought because of, not because authors like Jack Kerouac, but because of authors that have Twitter and start ranting about things that they wanted to include in the book but never did, and start saying, well, this character was gay because I say so on Twitter and things like that. It's more because of that. And I agree with it, because once we've seen it in these book discussions, we have different interpretations and all of them are valid and all of them are factable and all of them have to be respected. And if the author were to hack into our meeting and say otherwise, we shouldn't have to listen to him or her. If Alice Munro were to correct us, we wouldn't have to stand by. We can have our own version of the turkey season or whatever book.
Does it happen often that people try to add or edit, let's say, the message from their novel? I mean, I'm not questioning. I don't know.
I can think of a few examples, but
okay.
No, it's not a majority of them. Fortunately for us.
Yes, in the example that you were saying about Harry Potter, because the Dumbledore was gay, was it or because
Many
I don't
types of things.
remember.
Can you believe that a couple of Jewish fans wrote that were married? They wrote to her on Twitter and said, "Well, we are Jewish and there's no Jewish representation." And then she created a whole character out of nowhere and said, "Yeah, he was on the novels and he was Jewish and he had the most stereotypical Jewish name ever. He was Anthony Goldstein." The most stereotypical Jewish name ever, please. I'm not Jewish and I know that. And still, and he was like, "Yeah, he's Jewish and he's very important. He appeared in one book and was mentioned by the Sorting Hat."
Wow.
Yeah, but I agree. If
Those
you have
types of
read
things.
Harry Potter and you don't want to think that Dumbledore was gay, like it's in your right. Like
Yeah,
it's like
You can think that, but it's, I mean, it's pretty heavily implied that he's at least, if he's
very
attracted
old.
to a man at some point. Like, that doesn't mean he's gay, but
I interpret it that way, but maybe you don't, and
Maybe you
that's
don't.
fine.
no, you don't have to. But like, I mean, I that I think is pretty clearly intentioned in the book. All the other stuff, no, I don't think she thought that much about Anthony Goldstein when she wrote his name. But like, I think that
For
Dumbledore was
example,
clearly intentioned to be gay from the start.
I think so, but for example, we have one of the main characters, Hermione. Hermione is white. It is stated that she's white in the books, and then a play comes out, and the actress chose to play Hermione is black. Everything is fine. The problem is some people that I think are more racist, okay, than the majority of us fans say, "Oh, I don't like that Hermione is black in this play because in the book she's white and in the movie she's white." And then J.K. Rowling replies and says that she never said that Hermione was right. And then people have to shut her up because they pull out excerpts from her book that say Hermione's skin was white. And then you're like, do you know your own story better than I do? Or don't you really? Because it's fine because it was written in a different time. You don't have to be a social justice warrior and start start ritual writing a book with black people and different sexual or with people with different sexual orientations and people with different religions when it was a different time and age and no one requested that of you then. Write another book that does have those kind of characters, but don't try to change the ones you've already written. I think it's stupid, and no one will blame. Would blame. I don't know, Jack Kerouac for writing himself having sex with teenagers because he wrote it in the 50s and in a time when he was all the time in drugs and it was a different time and we wouldn't ask that of him. So I don't know, it just makes no sense to me to start changing your book just because society has changed when no one is demanding that you change the past. I think it's just silly.
Yeah. I guess you never know how you'd react if you get catapulted to the superstardom and now you're on Twitter and you're like a middle-aged person and like what is this? I mean, if I was on Twitter, it would also be a disaster because I don't understand how it works either. But like, so I can imagine she's a bit like,
I know, but
did anyone read that?
If you start to listen to people's complaints and start to take them personally and start to say things that way, it's a spiral that will never end. Because suddenly people are going to ask for unicorn representation and for unicorn rights, and you're going to have to rewrite your book to make the main character a unicorn, and then
there is one unicorn.
Nothing makes sense anymore.
Yeah, there already is unicorn representation.
Yeah, but I don't agree with the unicorn representation. I think unicorn rights have to be more of a part of the
and
book.
it gets killed immediately off page, so it's not very good representation.
Blood has properties that make people hunt them. It shouldn't be like that, so I complain. because I have a unicorn rights party.
The other day, I was discussing this because we were watching The Simpsons, and we realized that we're like lot of, I don't know, Chinese people or black people or whatever. So it's like, okay, Simpson started in the 80s, but we were discussing like, and in the new episodes, should be right, like add more, I don't know, character, more variety, or it should be right, like just leave it like in the 80s when it started.
No, but the Simpsons, they have Apu, it's a Indian, and Krusty the Clown is Jewish. I mean, it's
but for example, it's not.
There you go. That's all you need.
But they have
there's a black guy.
many cliches.
There's a black guy who
like-
works with Homer Simpson. There's a few. I mean, you cannot expect
Those
that
type
everything
of
has
shows,
it's an exact sample of the population at a given time.
Yeah, but I have rewatched some Simpson episodes when I was older, and I found it very tasteless. Some jokes, like
yeah,
Oh,
but
yes.
that's
Well,
normal
yeah, I think that's the
because
intention, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think they're
it
like.
changes a lot.
Don't watch South Park then.
no,
No.
I know.
But for example, I don't know if it's because they're very similar, but I believe it's Family Guy. Family Guy had a spin-off with Cleveland that is a black character, and then they did the Cleveland show where all the characters were black, but because in the normal show, Cleveland isn't a very important character, and there are not many people of color, so they wanted to say things, and it's like, yeah, cool, but then you see that the main point of the show is that the main family is so dysfunctional and horrible people and racist and misogynistic and God knows what, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to ask too much of you. But I guess it's because things change very fast now.
Yeah, but even in any case, now I think most shows depict families as dysfunctional families. I mean, you don't see anything like the Cosby Show anymore.
Well,
I think it's a
really
very
problematic
powerful example.
example.
I'm talking about the show. Don't confuse with the author. Remember?
Oh my god! I watched a podcast, and recently, because of all the Bill Cosby trial and all this stuff, they rewatched clips of the Cosby Show that are so horrible to look at now that we know all about him, and it was horrible. It was horrible. Because I remember there was one episode where it was like implied that he put something in a woman's drink, and I was like, this couldn't have happened in the real show, and it was true.
Wait, what did he do?
What?
It was implied that in a family dinner he slipped something in a woman's drink.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's like, is this really poetic justice or is it not?
That's fine.
Yeah, but other things were so taken out of context that it was crazy about the show.
Nowadays, I think normal families that work well are not entertaining, so they don't appear in shows.
Yeah.
It's better to laugh at the dysfunctionalities of the characters.
Because all families are dysfunctional in their own way, right?
I don't watch TV, so I don't. But I mean, that's what
I don't, but I do think you're right.
Well, then it's our prejudice that we share.
We need people with issues to be entertained. That's why people watch reality shows and all this drama and all these telenovelas. Yeah. People are addicted to drama.
I don't watch television very often too.
Much better.
But I think I have to go, but it has been really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm gonna go too.
Okay, so we are going to wrap it up then. Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank you.
thanks everyone
you.
to for
Thank
coming.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for the turkey, Karin. Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See you.